The conflict in Sudan has caused more than 350,000 people to flee violence and escape into neighboring countries.
I mean, every Rohingya family has experienced some sort of atrocities.
The war in Syria had so many players, but it's the innocent civilians that suffer. I'm Sinem Köseoğlu. Between us, what I learned from Syrian refugee crisis is that when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers.
I'm Tanvir Chaudhry. I've had the experience of covering the Rohingya refugees for 6 years, and it's one of the most humbling experiences in my life.
And I'm Virginia Pietromarchi. What struck me the most was the complete absence of men along the Chad-Sudan border, an absence that told a much bleaker story. In mid-April, a rivalry between General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the head of the Rapid Support Forces exploded into a war. I was focusing specifically about refugees fleeing fighting in Darfur into Chad. When I arrived in one of the biggest refugee sites, it was absolutely overwhelming. The UN estimates 90% of these refugees are women and children. Survivors told us of just men staying behind either to protect the land or to fight against armed groups.
So we are here in a refugee camp called Borota.
When I was about to file my first dispatch from the border, I got stung by a scorpion. But it allowed me to get into the hospital, and I actually managed to talk to a lady, and she had 2 bullets in her upper leg. And her uncle, he tells me that they were in El Geneina since trapped into the fighting, and him and his wife decided to split the family into 2. But then a massive communication blackout takes place, so the wife and the husband are not able to communicate anymore. The smugglers show up, and they have to leave. He's there in the hospital with his hand tapping his heart frenetically and with tears coming down his cheeks. These are stories for people whose life have been completely bulversed by a war that has nothing to do with them.
I have been covering the Syrian refugee crisis since the civil war began in 2011.
Atma refugee camp resembles a giant city.
There are millions of Syrian refugees living in tents for more than 10 years. Turkey is the country that hosts the largest number of Syrian refugees. For Syrian refugees who came to Turkey under temporary protection status, they are given rights for education and health services, but they cannot buy property and they cannot decide about their future. Rising anti-refugee sentiment is also concerning them. We were hearing reports that during the first couple of days of the earthquake, when search and rescue operations were underway, some Syrians were afraid to call out for help because they were afraid that they wouldn't try to help them. We don't know whether this really happened, but thinking that a Syrian refugee is still feeling this way after 11, 12 years in Turkey, this is upsetting. The latest presidential and parliamentary election was important for Syrians because they have faith in Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan as he opened the doors for them after the war began. Erdogan has been saying that Turkey is trying to build houses, shelters in opposition-held areas for safe returns of Syrians. For Syrians, it is like, should I stay or should I go? Because staying in Turkey also has many challenges. On the other hand, when we're talking about voluntary returns to Syria, they need assurance about their safety and security, not only physically but also politically.
I've been covering the refugee crisis since 2017 August with my cameraman Suleiman Shaun. They've accused Myanmar security forces of cutting people's throat, helicopter gunship shooting randomly in the villages. Because of the major security crackdown, which the UN and the US called a genocide, hundreds and thousands of Rohingya started entering Bangladesh within a week. I remember an incident where I had to get down in the water almost over knee deep. One woman was carrying a baby. Her child's got lungs problem, which possibly is a pneumonia. She didn't know where to go. She's in the knee-deep water holding her babies. This is a scene I'll never forget ever in my life. Another incident, this little 8-year-old girl was showing us in sign language what happened. That she was showing people were shooting, stabbing. You know, she couldn't really explain, but she was showing us. And then she started laughing after that, which kind of surprised us. And after that, she went totally silent, sad and silent. That's when I realized she's suffering from post-traumatic disorder. And there's many other cases like this. You really wonder, how can people do this to another group of people just of ethnic difference? There's issues in the camp right now. One is that the United Nations World Food Program has cut the ration for the Rohingyas since March, less than 9 cents per meal per person. Donors are more concerned about new events that's taking place. Why do people leave their home? Of course, because this is just not livable anymore, either because of war, atrocities, crime committed against them. What happened to Syrians? They fled their war because there was a civil war there. Same thing in Sudan. So it can happen anywhere because of geopolitics and conflict. It can happen to anybody, and I finally realized I could be one of them.